Welcome to Team All Blacks, a series of reflective interviews of some of the great names in New Zealand's rugby past. Today we talk with Earle Kirton, one of the great first 5/8s in the New Zealand game, a product of the Fred Allen era, and a man who had to fight his own battles to regain his All Black jersey, one of the more stimulating stories in All Blacks history. Earle, you made your first class debut in 1960 at Otago, but I believe you felt you were a bit lucky in getting that opportunity.
Yes. In fact, I've been a bit lucky quite often in terms of selection. Guys tend to fall over, or bloody poor guys get hurt, who was certainly higher up the pecking order than I was at the particular time. And I think one of my varsity mates wanted to go home and get married in August, so I got a game for University A, and I'd been in the Ds. I started the year off in the varsity A, B, Cs and the Ds. And I gradually got through as they all got hurt. They all kept pulling out. And the incumbents for Otago, 2 of them got hurt, and then it gradually got to a stage where there was no one left, so they had to take a chance with the kid.
And you played Southland against that?
I played Southland, and I've never realised what a game down in the bog and the wind and the rain was like. And not only that, getting cuffed around the ear about 3 or 4 times by either Axe Soper or Robin Archer. What I couldn't believe, though, was that he and his brother, Robin and
Watson,
he played first and second. And they were getting into it as well. And I thought, backs don't go on like this. And you do if you play with Southland, because that's what they were, tough as teak.
A great learning experience, though, in that environment over the years.
Yeah, it was, because then Archer afterwards, Robin came over and he doesn't say a lot and doesn't talk a lot, but he really got down to the nitty gritty and started to tell me, an odd thing about how you play it. And it didn't sink in necessarily at the time, because it never would, because I was too young to absorb it. But it certainly was a help, because having given me a belt round, he told me why he gave me a belt round. Point 1, then point 2 was that he was interested in New Zealand rugby. So he, having been an All Black, had that All Black sort of or love of it, having tried like hell himself to pursue it. Told me you almost had to be a mathematician, which he was. He did a BSc in maths at Otago Uni. But it was the logic of lines and running. And I'd never ever thought about it. I just ran, played, whatever. And suddenly it started to click that if you're going to get any better, boy, you're going to have to do something about it. So that was my initial. But then I was lucky, because I was mentored by 2 great coaches, really, and great men. I don't know why they took a shine to a university guy. I think I was pretty modest and pretty quiet. And they thought I looked as if I had a bit of talent, so they'd sort of go with me with Charlie Saxton and Vic Kavanagh. Well, they were phenomenal. And I would get into trouble or have problems from time to time. And Vic would go and draw on the Southern. I always had to go to Southern. He'd never come to varsity, because he couldn't afford to, because his father had always gone. And the rivalry between Southern and varsity was absolutely intense. But I could go over there, even after I played for varsity against someone else. I'd go over and find Vic at the Southern Club and say, Vic, I'm having trouble with XGBW. And he would we'd go so cold, as you can imagine there. So there was plenty of drawing boards, a la the mist on the bloody windows of the clubhouse. And he'd go and draw me, and he made it all lines too. So here I had Archer starting and then reinforcing lines of running and how you attack, etc., etc. And he then started taking interest. So he came, and I found that at times he was watching when I played. And then he had another hat on. He became president of the Otago Rugby Union. So he then came down to logic. Wonderful brain, rugby brain. Just extremely logical and almost mathematical, and at times ruthless in the way he approached it. So I was very, very lucky. And the other thing about him is that it came to fruition later on, my relationship with Charlie and he, because I didn't realise at the time, obviously, but Fred Allen was a great devotee of Kavanagh's. He would come to Dunedin selling all his women's dresses and frocks and God knows what. On his Magi tour, he'd go all around New Zealand.
Of course, we come to the 63-64 tour. Now, I believe your father gave you some advice that it was going to be tough work on the tour, and he wasn't wrong.
No, well, it wasn't so much that. It was that I wasn't, well, obviously I wasn't ready for it. But the other thing was that you wouldn't believe about the run-up, or the run into it, was I got a ring, the North-South match in Canterbury, which was going to be damn near a sellout, which was remarkable. I think about 55,000 or 60,000 went to it in those days. And I got a ring on Thursday afternoon before the Saturday Inter-Island game. And it was from Doug Hamilton. Hamilton was a South Island selector. And Doug said, Earle, we want you to come to Christchurch. And being naive and stupid again, I said, Doug, I can't. In those days you just didn't say. Oh, I said, Doug, I can't. I've got an exam tomorrow morning, and I have to. He said, well, I think we might get round that, said Douglas. He said, well, come on the rail car at 5:30 at Friday night. So I got on the rail car at 5:30 and then went to Christchurch, obviously. Hamilton was down, a great guy, great, and not a ginormous coach, but a wonderful psych coach. I mean, and beautifully soft, and a real total gentleman. He'd have 3 changes of gear. I know I digress talking about him, but he'd have gear for breakfast, which was a jersey and a hacking jacket. He'd change for lunch, and then for dinner at night, it was always went into a 3-piece suit. But the guy was a real bloke, and he said to me, he said, oh, well, it's 12:30 now, 1 o'clock in the morning, off the rail car. What are you going to do now? And I said, I'm in your hands, Doug. He said, well, I'll put you with a prop because I don't want you going with any of those backs. They'll be too flighty for you. And I said, Doug, how did I make this? Why am I being called in? He said, well, Bruce got hit with concussion on Wednesday at Southland. I said, I can imagine that. And he said, Neil McCara's done his medial ligaments, and he was next on the rank. And then he said, Trevor Morris has pulled a hammy. I said, so I'm 4th drop. He said, you're 4th drop, and he says, and you're lucky to be 4th. He said they wanted someone from Buller to play. And I can't even remember who he was from Buller. He said that. I mean, here I was, 4th drop. And Hamilton got out and just said, how can you beat a test side that's just beaten Australia by 10 or 15 or 20 points, I forget now. He said, how are you going to beat them? And no one said a word. And he said, we're going to climb into them, was a word he used. We're going south of the Otago and Canterbury stuff. We're going to climb it. I've given you a rock and a pivot to hold Grey. I brought old Jack Shaw, he called him, to back into the stand. He won't move much around the pitch, but Jack, I know you'll never move. And he went through this brilliant, I've never forgotten, a brilliant pre-playing speech and motivatory. It was absolutely incredible the way he motivated the whole team. We thought, deep breath, we've got nothing to lose. And then I realised I had one of the great scrum halves of all time inside me, but I knew it then too. And I knew he'd be firing it away, so let's fire the bugger. And later was firing it to the centre, Spooky Smith, most of the time in the game, or to Derek Arnold. And we're all kids. The whole backline was kids, bar for Johnny Ellison on 1 week. And Fungus got his first game for the South Island. He was at fullback. And we ran. And we basically ran them ragged. But having beaten by such a big score, I mean, it was phenomenal. That was it.
Fantastic.
But it wasn't so much that. It's the only time I've ever been to Canterbury in the bloody crowd. It went for us. I mean, they just started to roar in the end. We suddenly realised we had a show. And I think I did. I played bloody well. I mean, I surprised myself. I mean, later was just putting me into the holes. And you couldn't help but run. All you needed was some acceleration. I had a bit of that. And this bloody kid at halfback, well, I was a kid too. We were both the same old, but he just kept firing away. And it was so wide, that Nathan couldn't get to me. And so then I started to get confidence I wasn't getting smashed around. But I did get caught, but I got caught very, very late by Walker. And he took me out with a stiff arm. And I'm flat on the ground, gaga. And a lovely old sartorial gentleman with a golf stick waving his hair came up and had a look over me. And he just looked over and he said, "Kirton, are you all right?" I don't know whether I was seeing round circles as I was looking up at the sky. My nose was shooting out blood on hand. He said, "Come off." And I had to look up, it was Jack Finley. "Come off. You've already got a trial in September. You don't have to play on." Trial in September from fourth drop for the South. Well, I almost bounced up off the bloody ground. I thought, shit, I'll have some more of this. So we went on, they never scored. There was one D.B. Clark penalty and that was it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That didn't happen very often in those days.
No, it was a phenomenal it was one of those incredible days, yeah.
And it was obviously the forerunner to
Well, yes, I mean, really in the way I played, they couldn't leave me out. And obviously Laidlaw had played his way in, and Keith Nelson had played well. And so and Keith came over to me, Nelson came over to me too, and he said, "Ernie, get up. If you can get up, we're going to beat him. He was captain of the South Island, Nelson. But he was also my man in digs in the flat with us at Dunedin. He played for varsity too. Yeah, incredible day. But then I got away there, and my father said to me, he said, "Now listen, you're incredibly lucky to make this side. It's not that I don't feel bloody wonderful." He says, "They'll never be able to take it away from me. You've at least made the All Blacks once." So he said, "You've got halfway there, but you won't get the full way there. And the game they're going to play is not going to suit you, boy." So he said, "For goodness sake," he said, "they don't want to run it. They want to kick it." Because he said that's the way they style and the way they played. And he says the way that McPhail and Canterbury guys, so he gave me a rundown on the way they'd want to play it. So that was the old man giving me the last handshake before I went away. And he said, "Don't bitch. You're so young, you'll get another whack if you're lucky. If you keep playing well.
Great advice.
You will get another whack.
Great advice.
But don't bitch." After the Newport game, it was very, very sad because I had played like Dick and knew that was probably it. I think I must have dropped damn near 10 or 12 balls. And, now when I look back on it, and I've gone into coaching myself, I don't reckon I saw the balls coming. Not even coming, let alone catching. I never slept for 4 nights. I couldn't believe I was going to put on and all I could have were dreams and nightmares before playing was I could see David Hewitt and the 59 Lions, and all I had was these images of these guys who were still playing in Ireland and chaps like just carving up carving up New Zealand and brilliant fast backs and O'Reilly and co. And I found I was chasing them in my dreams. Wow. Nightmares. They were mares. They weren't bloody. They weren't dreams. And so that was psychologically I was getting a real bathing. And it was, and I was looking at it now. I mean, they did the wrong thing. That is, the team, in a sense, did. But they thought I was a wee bit vague, and I had to go vague. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to cope with it. I wouldn't be able to cope with being on tour if I was going vague. So I had to opt out almost and go vague. But heavens, I saw more churches and cathedrals and where Dryden lived and Shakespeare went. I mean, I had plenty of nights. And the funny thing was that other partner in crime was B.J. Lahore. So we both called one another Wednesday because we could only ever get a Wednesday game. And after Newport, I think I had to wait 6.
6 games?
Yeah. 5 or 6. And it wasn't for any dastardly reason other than that they weren't prepared to risk me. And then I got the first game I got a game against Cambridge University. And Cambridge University had a chap who looked pretty good when I had a look at him.
Fellow Gibson by the
Well, yes, but I didn't know that at the time. Well, I thought university, they thought university, same ilk, he'll be all right there, we won't cause too much trouble. Well, shit, I got beaten twice by Gibson until I went miles outside him and drove him back. But he beat me twice. And if we hadn't had Don Clark at fullback, we'd have damn near got beaten by Cambridge University. So then I had to wait. I knew, well, that'll be 1, 2, 3, 4 penalties there probably. There's 4 weeks again or 3 weeks again. So I was ending up on a 36-game tour with about 9 games. But it was the way they did psycho then. You want to play for the All Blacks? You cope. You sort your head out. There's no one here to do it. Not today when you have another bus full of head shrinks. No. And they showed me, their way of showing me was brutal, but it was still reasonably fair because they weren't interested in killing me. They're really interested in showing me that you want to play and you're going to play for the country, you get your head sorted out, boy. They weren't going to help it necessarily. And the only guy that did, or came near me, used to give me a bit of psyche talk, was Pat Walsh. He was tremendous. He said, come with me, Conchy. They just called me Conchy. It was a bit unusual. They reckon that when I said I went a bit vague, they used to call me Just Conscious.
So that's how they
Who's Just Conscious? Yeah. And then it went on, they were still calling me Just, in the second tour in 67. And the back seat boys decreed that, no, I think he's playing well enough now, we'll just call him Conch. So I got Conch out of the early nickname, but still it hadn't gone, not in their bloody minds, it was still there.
But that period in isolation or in exile, if you like, how did you cope through those years, in 65, 66?
Well, I'd go down and have a cup of tea with Charlie Saxton in the morning. I jettisoned rugby, I jettisoned the university studies a fair bit because I really got angry. But it came back to coming back on the plane after the 63. I sat there, and then I thought, nah. 22 games had gone by, and I remember it was 22 because I rang the old man and I said, should I have a chat to Winnerow yet? And say, what have I got to do? And it was disappointing because I went and I had a chat to Willie. He was a great man, and he used to make you so proud in the way he spoke and the way he handled himself. He was a good man and a good player. He was really number 8 rather than a prop, but he fitted in, to go with the team. But a grand captain, you go over the hill with him. In wartime, it was wonderful. But I went to him and I said, what have I got to do to get any better? And I can remember still seeing the carpet. It was brown carpet at the Caledonian Hotel at British Caledonian in Edinburgh. And we had 22 games into the tour, and I said, what have I got to do, or what do you want me to do? And they had the idea I wasn't training hard enough because that's what they all did. They just trained harder and smashed into it more and all that sort of thing. There's nothing to do with that. I mean, it wasn't fitness. I mean, I was so young that I could run all day if I had to. And so and he just said, oh, you'd have to lift your game 30%. And I thought, shit, what's 30%? Give me something. Will he give me something? No. Hadn't thought of it that way. And it might have been my mumbling too that I hadn't actually brought it out of him to say something, because he would have had some ideas. And then I thought, shit, the old man said, don't bitch, so I wouldn't go back to him again. I left it. But I got angrier towards the end of it, and angrier about my performance, not with anyone else really, just with me. And I thought I'd missed out on a great opportunity and I should have improved at the end, and I reckon therefore I was a failure, basically. And coming back on the plane, I sat with Billy Davis, B.J. Lahore, and I.R. McRae was on the other side, the youngies. And I said to B.J., I said, there's one thing I'm going to do. I'm going to get back into this bloody side if it takes me 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 F years. And I said, I know how to do it. I now know how to do it. I spent so much time thinking about it. And Billy Davis said, well, I'm not going to have the team. He said, I reckon I can play too. He said, I'm going to have a real crack. And IR was going all right because he was good and steady at second. He played pretty well anyhow in 63 and always looked as if he was going to shore up midfield a bit. And PJ didn't say anything, if I can remember. Yeah, I don't think he did. But he came up afterwards when I got back, he said, I remember you saying to me in the back of that party, and you and Billy Davis. And he said, Ernie, he said, I thought you were going to have a hell of a struggle. That was it. Never said any more about it. Just that was the last comment made.
So the anger, you came home and obviously just...
And I started to put it in.
Yeah.
I went down and I got a guy to get me faster. I went down and used old Jumbo Tyree, a joker in Dunedin who'd run in the Commonwealth Games for 200 metres, I think he was in, or 400, might have been. At least he was. I said, how do I get more form and fitter and faster? I've got to get faster, Jumbo. He came down 3 or 4 times for no money, and realised I was working hard. And he showed me how to make good form, got me up on my toes, got me driving forward to accelerate the ball, or just technique, sprinting technique. And he probably got me another two, I reckon, probably 2 metres and 100 metres almost, or in 50 metres, he got me 2 metres faster. Well, that was enough to clear a gap.
And that was evident.
Yeah, well, it became evident because then I just kept practicing sharp stuff. So I had to really coach myself in that sort of angle because I wanted to do something more than other guys were doing. I didn't want. I had a natural ability, quick off the blocks, but I had to be faster off the blocks. It was just a progression of getting better at what you're doing. That's the same thing you do. You know, guys try to improve, no matter what walk of life they're in. Yeah. So that was part of it. And then I'd go and have morning tea with Charlie, and Charlie would settle me down. Just relax. He never called me conscious. And then on Saturdays I'd go if I have any trouble, and I'd get into Kavanagh. And between the two of them, they must have conferred too in the side. They said, well, I think we'll go with this guy. I'm pretty sure that's what happened because they were having chats at the same time. And then the guy that was then coaching Otago, which is a godsend too, was Watson. Well, he was wrapped in the logic of Kavanagh anyhow. And not only that, he had an attacking approach to it. He was a back coaching forwards. And he got his forward pack to play well and provided hellish and good ball for the Otago backs. And we're a good back line.
Well, that brings us to the point of your relationship with Laidlaw. I mean, you say he was in your mind, he was the finest player that played the halfback.
He'd be the greatest passing halfback the world's ever seen because it was so fast.
Yeah, what were the qualities that made him just so special, apart from the pass?
He was just so fast off the deck. But he was one movement. You see these guys picking up now and finding a runner. And they've taken 2 paces. That's 5 seconds. No, not quite. 1, 2, 3. 3 seconds is 20 metres. No wonder you're getting slaughtered in midfield. And not only that, cheating coming up faster because defence being the bloody issue. You know, it's one of those things. And then he could kick, but he was brave. For a university guy, he was brave. Nelson and he were incredibly tough mentally. And if you asked him to be physically do anything tough now, he wouldn't, but mentally tough. And they were great, but they were both great players for a university guy. Keith was only 21 when he was captain university, and he built into half the bloody, southern gang, and in the end, he'd go up and down the line like Pine Tree. Because his young men, were getting booted around on the ground or getting a bit of dirt going in, saying, hey, stop, we're here to play ball. And if they didn't, he was big enough and good enough and tough enough to belt them.
So into the scene comes Fred Allen, about 66, 67.
Yes, and the other thing too is that he, Nelson too, on another hand, because I saw him at Aquinas, I only made the All Blacks and got close to playing that well because I saw Nelson Keith Nelson, and a guy called Murray Meek, who played later for the South Island and played for Otago for a long time. Very good lock. Practice, leaping in the corridors. They'd give up half an hour and you'd hear thump, thump. And none of the other wee students in their balls, they wouldn't go out anywhere near them because the big blokes would tell them to shut up. I'd probably get a whack for going out into the corridor. Well, they'd run down the corridor, leap to try and get their head to hit the ceiling, not their hands. The head had to hit it. I remember it took them a year to get there. And then Nelson said, you can make these All Blacks, I reckon, he said, if you train and you really go for it. So he went down and did bodybuilding and the things they do now. And he built himself up. He increased his aerobic capacity, and he was a hell of a good player. And he obviously was the captain because he was the leader of guys, but he showed me how you can do it. You can actually do it. You can work and make it if you really work hard enough. That was the key to it too. So I had the old man encouraging me. Then I had a couple of mentors, and then I had this Nelson guy telling me you can do it. And it was phenomenal. The way he'd run around the base, I used to go down and run with him. And then we'd practice passing or we'd sprints and whatnot. And then I didn't do so much work at uni, but I wasn't too worried about that. I was more worried about having an aim in life was, get the degree a degree in the end, but it was basically to make sure I got back into the ABs. And Nelson was part of that key to it. And then Fred came down, and Charlie, after Mackie Huru, when he was kicking the ball all over the place and whatnot, and Fred came down, and I couldn't make the South Island side in 1967, it probably was, yeah. And a South Island trial, I missed out. And I was sitting with Fred. He came down to watch me. Otago played North Otago. I was sitting with Fred, and Fred said, don't worry about missing out. He said, it's not you though shooting, it's me. Because I told him you had to get it. You had to be in it. I promise you I told him you had to be in it. Because I wanted to see you go. And they just told me, get stuff. They played Bruce Watt. He said, it's gone. I remember Fred was telling me all these things about all the players, and I thought, shit, he shouldn't be saying that sort of things. That's the way it was. And he said, come with me. And he went over, and then and I stood from here to where you are now sitting, and he went over and he ripped into Les George and the South Island selectors, and a guy from Nelson, I've forgotten now, and he said, I realised you just did it just about a piece of me. I asked you if you put him in, and you can't even do that for New Zealand. I walked away and left him. He said, I'm not staying here. We're under the rose stand at Dunedin. He said, if we stay here, he said, I'll whack him. He said, not putting up with this. He said, come with me. So we left the aftermatch function, didn't even wait for the speeches. And he then took me away to the pub ways. And he got it stuck into me. He had an hour and a half. And then he plied me with some piss, so I was pretty pissed when I went home. But he got me a cab back to the flat. He said, this is where I'm going to do it. And I said to him, well, you can't. Because I said, you got Mackie, and Mackie's your mate, and he's won you the shield and held on to the shield for you right through. Got to change. Got to change the way we're playing the game. And he says, he can't change it. You've got to show it. And he said, if you get into any trouble, go and see Vic or Charlie. Go and bounce off them all the time until I come down. I'm going down again in 3 weeks. But and against North Otago, I was told he was there, so I had to go. I think I scored about 3 tries. Bloody cut them well and truly up, but still wasn't enough to get in. So in the 25 players they picked, I wasn't in the 25. So I thought, that dream of mine of getting back, she's starting to fade away. She's going away on the big jet plane out of here. And so with that, and Fred came and said, have you got any guts? I said, do you know what, Fred, I don't know if I can answer that. Because I said, I thought I did before Newport, and now it's so bad, I lost confidence. I said, I don't know whether I said, I'm playing well now, though. And he said, good. He said, I'm coming back in 3 weeks. I want to have a look at you. And I think we're playing Southland. And I played pretty well, but it was boggy again down in Southland. It wasn't a great game for him to watch. He'd come all the way from Auckland to see it. But he was still interested. And he was going to play me in the Jubilee Test. And he came up with a clipboard, like you've got there. And he didn't walk around with it, but he had it. And it was, he showed me, he had them in, some in ink and some in pencil. I was in pencil, number 10. And he said, you didn't do enough to convince me. He said, I know Laidlaw didn't play inside you today. You had Collody, and he's not, I know he was awful, and he couldn't get the ball to him and whatnot. But he said, I can't take the chance. And in front of me, he got the rubber and the eraser, and he erased my name from number 10. And then he put Mackie Woody back in. And so he said, I'm still interested. That was it. And so...
But did he put Heroini in pencil or ink?
No. Heroini wasn't in. I was in pencil, and Heroini was in reserves in ink.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's definitely going to make the reserves. And it was drama. He loved a bit of it. Fred did too, so that was it. But then I ran, and when he was round, I ran, and I bloody looked after myself, and I got him, recently I was really... I was a model tourist. Yeah, but he was a great coach, and I would never have got back though when I look back now, unless he was going to change the way he played.
Yeah,
and it's like this cricket team. We've got a case in point. I mean, you wouldn't really necessarily have McCullum opening with bloody batting, but I mean, in this case you are, because he's going to smack it round and get so many runs quickly. You don't need the slow opener necessarily, just stand there for 5 days and only make 25 runs. And, Jeffrey Boycott style. But once he was changing his tune, he had to go elsewhere. And then he knew he had to grow up. And the thing was, in the background, Charlie and Vic were encouraging him like nothing to play a wider game. It was so easy. They kept on saying, with that great forward pack, you can go wide. And that's the resurrection.
At what point did you feel the resurrection was complete? Was it the England test?
Yeah, when I got the nod to beat Mackie for the English test was complete.
Yeah.
It was the third day and I'd risen from the dead.
Well, of course, that was your first test match as well.
Yeah.
But 2 tries to celebrate as well.
Yeah, played well, and I was playing well right up to it too. But I wouldn't let anything, interfere with the bloody thing. Really, I was looking after myself. I went on a rigid campaign to get back.
And that tour itself, when you look back at it now, I mean, it obviously was a game changer for the game around the world.
It was. Well, I don't think, they all talk about these modern forwards going and passing. Those guys could pass. They were brilliant passers. That's what made us so good, that link. I mean, Angus McLeod could catch a ball anywhere. Pine Mead's left foot spirals. He and Stan Meads would fight in the air to see who was going to take the kick-off, because you could mark them in those days, if you remember early on. And they'd have a scrap as to who was going to take it, and they'd always kick it across the left foot so you couldn't clear it away. But they didn't realise the forwards were going to mark it, and then left foot spiral down the touchline. And I mean, they had skills. And well, Pine played almost every position in a test team for various periods of time,
yes.
Like 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. And of course, Kirky could go, Walker had good hands. They were 20 years ahead of their time, the 4-pack was. Yeah. And I can never forget looking at England, and I started to see just after the kick-off on the English test, and there were 70,000 there, including Queenie. And they took it down the sideline, and they pushed it. And they just drove, and drove, and drove. And Laidlaw, the cheeky bugger, never forgot to put both hands in his pockets. All Blacks never had pockets, only the Poms had pockets, because they put handkerchiefs in them. And Charlie had got Umbro shorts, and I've never forgotten the name of the brand. It's not good coming from Adidas. And the Adidas room now. Charlie got Umbro shorts for me so I could put American ball glue in the pockets so like my hands, I wouldn't drop the ball like Newport.
Wow.
And they used to glue together. They'd go to the laundry because I'd never take it all out. And they'd stick together and have to prise them apart again. Umbro shorts. And of course, Laidlaw, being cheeky and talking, put both hands in the pocket because he wasn't going to get the ball back. And they marched it down 30 metres down the touchline. And he put his hands in the safe. No, their ball gone. And then it would come back and then we'd fire it. They were phenomenal. And as a unit, they were great too. Yeah, they were 30 years ahead, they were 20 years ahead of their time.
The forward pack was great, but the back line also relished the opportunity it provided.
Oh yeah, you're getting good ball.
Yeah.
I mean, you had to be an idiot if you weren't going to make the most of it.
Yeah.
And that's what happened.
We're running out of time, Earl, but just the finale to that era, I mean, you didn't have Fred as coach in South Africa. That must have been a great disappointment.
We'd have won with Fred. And it was no disrespect to Ivan. Ivan was a hellish and good chap. And you might say I'm now damning with faint praise, but he wasn't a coach. He was a passionate man on rugby, good friend, wonderful friend, and a good bloke. But nowhere near the tactical and the needle that you needed that Alan had. Alan would have bolted it. And then what they did was they made him, said to Fred that the rugby union said that he had to go back and reapply. And he said, reapply for what? He said, for the job. He said, well, haven't I applied and reapplied with the record? And the hierarchy said, no, they were looking to get rid of Fred in a way. Just rotate it, do the things they thought they had to do. Sad, really sad.
Yeah. And did it hang over the tour at times? Did you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Talked about it, and realised that we're all really going along on Pine Tree and BJ were almost having to sort of mainly coach the side. And it got sort of hard to run, and we were getting near the end of the road, and I would say we needed needle. We needed the bloody psyche to lift us, to play a couple of big games for them. And we'd have won the series. We were too good. We were beating every provincial side by 30 or 40. And they just chopped us down the middle with their own referees. It was diabolical. Yeah, but you need a scrum half. And this is why one team's going well. It's not because of... what's his name for Otago, the first 5'8" now, and helping them. It's Smith. Smith's getting them away. Smith's giving them time. It's time. It's way back to Havana. How many seconds did it take to get it there? Why take a pace? And that was the other thing with Adel too. He was so tough that if he was in the bog, he'd dive it just to get it to you.
Yeah.
The essence of the halfback was to get it to him. Then they said, he wasn't as good a runner as going. Well, he was. He'd go around the side, and he was so strong, he was like a brick shithouse, he was about 13.5 stone, he was only 5'7", 5'8". He'd go around the side and hold it up for the big boys to come on, catch Gareth Edwards 5 times in a test, 5 times behind the scrum.
Outstanding. Yeah. It was a great era. You must look back on that. Your own triumph in coming back, but that being part of a team that was so outstanding.
The team. It was the team that got me back. I mean, I was lucky again. To get into a team that was bloody good. That's what I was going to say. When I was starting to drive down too, the other impression I got, when they were driving forward like that, and he put his hands in the pocket, I wasn't going to get it. I had a look and I thought, shit, you're a lucky bastard. That has to be, I even recognise, that's how much time I started to have in that second tour. Here you are in the heat of the test, haven't scored yet, and they're all ready to go, and they do this drive, and you think, shit, I was lucky to be born at the right time. I could have been born in the 70s, and it would have been dreadful, but the pack was nowhere near as good as that. Born with the greatest pack, 20 years, and the greatest halfback. Had to be lucky.